We're joined now by the Mayor of Bristol, Marvin Rees. He's actually Mayor until next year because Bristol voted to abolish the post of Mayor. Housing was very much part of Marvin Rees's pitch, but we can also talk to him about levelling up because that fund has been distributed today. Marvin, thanks so much for joining us on PM while we're in Bristol. I'd love to hear your comment on the conversation I've just had with Phil Harding, the recorded conversation, because his point is not that we shouldn't build more, but we should really be building more on brownfield sites. And I think he is thinking sort of more urban sites like the city in Bristol here.
Well, there was a lot in that, and I think he made a few more points there, and we should be building on brownfield sites. But I mean, I would say we as a city leadership do want to build on brownfield sites. One of the things we think that housing, we've made it the centerpiece of our platform. We think that the kind of homes we build and where we build them are key to educational outcomes, health outcomes, the resilience of the economy, and are going to be the key determinant of the planetary impact, both in terms of emissions and the impact on nature. So by building on brownfield sites, we can build efficiency into lives, we can build in active travel zones, and obviously we can build stable, resilient communities. So we want to build on brownfield sites. The challenge for us is it costs more money to build on brownfield sites. And I don't think it's always fully appreciated just how difficult it can be to bring them forward, be they cholera pits or be they old, polluted land from diesel and so forth. But we are doing that. Temple Quarter, we're bringing forward 10,000 homes in the middle of the city. If you look at the city skyline, we're building more densely, we're building higher. And in fact, what we get, Evan, is we get a lot of opposition for building more densely and higher in the middle of the city also.
Well, everywhere you look, there are people who will say, I'd like it to be a somewhat lower density population around me. If you can build them on brownfield, though, and I hear the point that it can be more expensive sometimes to clear the ground and such like, would it not be better to take Phil's point, to build them all on brownfield and not to spoil places which are very beautiful and where the people of Bristol may go to visit, that they may appreciate as city dwellers, not being spoilt by housing estates?
So let me just make this point. Housing delivery is practical, right? It's about finding land. It's about finding money and getting it through the system. But as a country, we need to have a much better quality debate about housing. Because what I can do in City Hall here, I literally had a meeting, full council meeting a few months ago, right? I had 3 public statements. One statement said, do not build on new land. Do not sprawl. These people sat next to each other in the public gallery. The next person said, I want you to solve the housing crisis. The next person said, I don't want you to build densely and at height. I think it's bad for people to live in density. And I said to them, you all need to talk to each other. And for the last guest that you had, and for other people, we as a country need to actually have a better conversation. There are no cost-free solutions to the challenges we face. Every solution has a negative consequence for some people, be it building on new land or be it the need to accept a new kind of city skyline and to build more densely. And unless we have a better quality debate, you will not make space for the kind of political leadership that will solve the problems we're facing. But we do want to build on brownfield sites. But it's also true that Bristol is 42 square miles. We're 472,000 people today. We're going to be 550,000 by the middle of this century. It is not humanly possible to build at the pace and scale that we need to meet the needs of that population. We've got 18,000 people on the waiting list now. Yeah. So we need government to partner with us, but we need people to be much more mature in much more mature in the quality of debate they have.
In a few minutes, Marvin, we're going to look at the issue of student accommodation in Bristol. Students finding it incredibly hard to get places to live. Would a solution to some of the problems the pain that you have expressed, to be to tell the universities you can't keep bringing more and more people in without finding places for them to live, without building places for them to live?
Well, again, here you have a whole bunch of competing challenges for us. One is our universities need to grow to survive in the modern world, right? Universities are of critical importance to our local economy in Bristol, both as a major employer, but also the economic benefit that the students bring in. It's also true that students bring pressure to the housing stock, and we are building purpose-built student accommodation, which interestingly is another point of tension, because when purpose-built student accommodation is provided, people say you're building houses for students. Yes, because if they don't get purpose-built students, they move into the regular housing stock, and obviously students don't pay council tax as well. So we've got this, all cities will have this dilemma of supporting universities as huge contributors to the local economy, but also recognizing that you pay a price for that. And the dance that we have to do is to support university growth, but to make sure the growth is at the pace that the city can actually cope. But again, you can't do that without a mature relationship, a supportive relationship from central government.
Okay, let's talk about levelling up. Bristol did win a bit of the money going today, I think, didn't it?
We did. We got 14.5 million to go into Filwood Broadway, which is in the top 1.5% most deprived wards in the city. So very good news for us. But that doesn't take away, Evan, from a share we have about levelling up, in that we think it's a fatally flawed approach to financing places around the UK.
But I mean, many have said, hang on a minute, it should be about the north of England in particular, which tends to get overlooked in a lot of the time. Would you agree with the criticism that really affluent cities like Bristol shouldn't be, albeit, of course, they have the very deprived areas, the rich places have poor areas, but those richer towns and cities, particularly in the south, they shouldn't be the ones getting these levelling up funds?
Well, I put it like this. At no point do I want to take away from the geographical inequalities in our economy, because they are real, right? The north-south divide, the disproportionate focus of investment in the south, particularly the southeast, is real. The point we have made repeatedly, with the support of northern leaders such as Susan Hinchcliffe up in Bradford as well, for example, is that while there is a geographical difference, you also have to nuance levelling up by saying that there are people groups who get left behind wherever they live. Unless you take those people groups into account, you will leave forward not just pockets of deprivation, but whole cultures of deprivation in the south. But also, you will leave those people behind in the north as the northern economy starts moving. But at no point does that nuance of adding the element of people to it take away from the geographical inequalities within our economy. But the fatal flaw, if I can just say this, is that levelling up, one is they announced it and then everyone tried to work out what it meant. So that was uncertainty. We don't need more uncertainty. But secondly, they're channeling it through the old model of local government finance, in which they chuck a bunch of money on the table and tell local authorities across the country to fight for it. And then there's a zero-sum fight. We all spend money in the bidding round, and then some win and some lose. That is not a plan. Substituting a thought-through sequencing of national investment to drive the economy forward with a beauty parade in which someone with an Excel sheet in Whitehall then makes a judgment is not a plan for national growth.
And your party, the Labour Party, has made that criticism. And indeed, Andy Street of Tory Metro Mayor of West Midlands has said the same.
And I'm glad, can I just say, Evan, I'm glad the Labour Party has made that criticism, but I'm talking as a mayor of Bristol. I need a city with a functioning economy, and this system is not working for us.
I want to just talk about mayors very, very quickly, because you've been voted, well, the position of mayor has been abolished, basically, or is about to be abolished by Bristol. You're not one of the new sort of cadre of metro mayors. There is a West of England metro mayor, Dan Norris, obviously, for Labour. But tell me about whether you think mayors make better ways of administering areas than, if you like, council committees.
Well, I think they do. It's like me marking my own homework in many ways to say so it's a little bit unfair, but I'll share as I can. I think
briefly, if you would,
talk to business and voluntary sector. I think they do. I think they offer more certainty. I think they offer more visible leadership, more accountable leadership, rather than the kind of invisible process that emerge out of invisible council chambers when the leaders are selected. And I think they're more directly accountable to the people rather than the chamber for their position. I think Bristol's made an error, but as I said, I hope I was wrong. Yeah, of course you do. It's like Brexit. You have to accept the result of the referendum.
Marvin Rees, Labour Mayor of Bristol, for another year. Thanks so much for joining us.